So what happens when someone presents something to God that is not holy? Well, if we look at Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 26, it says what happens. And it says this: her priests have violated my law and profaned my holy things. They have not distinguished between the holy and unholy, nor have they made known the difference between the unclean and the clean. And they have hidden their eyes from my Sabbath, so that I am profaned among them. If the person or the people who are in charge of what goes before God, in charge of the assembly and the congregation, allows something that is unholy to be presented before God, his name is profaned. And that's what happened with the sons of Aaron. They presented this unholy fire. Yes, they were the priests, but they went before God the wrong way. They were probably drunk, and if you read the report about how they were they abused their power. And so they went before God, and God took them out. And so we have a church today where there is a lot that's offered and we think is okay. But if we really look into the person or the people and we see that that's not holy, what happens is you profane the name of God. And he is to be regarded as holy by all who come before him. And so that's just some things that we need to look at when it comes to what does God think about people who come into the congregation who are sinners, and they do it as a lifestyle and they are unrepentant. What's going on in the church today is this. A church has become very welcome to people coming in, and I'm not saying that we should not let them in, period. It's like, you're a sinner, don't even come in. I'm saying this: the church has gotten to a point where there isn't a chance for sinners to come to repentance because the gospel isn't being presented. And as I stated in another video, the Bible is being used, but it's not being taught. So if it is not being taught, you know the gospel is not being presented, and thus the sinner isn't given a chance to be convicted and to come to repentance. What is happening is they're being allowed to assimilate into. In other words, they can take on the nature of the people in the congregation and start to act and say as others do, but there's been no internal conviction. All right, no change. They're not new creatures. They're still the same thing. It reminds me of I'm in church, and one mother brings her son to church because she wants him to start getting right. So she convinces him, you can come to church and play the drums. And so his thing was, I'm here to play the drums. And what wound up happening was he and a few people in the church, well, the sexual activity rate kind of increased. Let me just put it like that. And I'll leave it like that. All right. But let's move on. When it comes to the things that we offer before God, we need to understand how he sees them, especially if we come as unrepentant people steeped in the sin that we are about. In Isaiah chapter 64 and verse 6, here's what it says. But we are all like an unclean thing, and all our righteousnesses are like filthy rags. We all fade as a leaf, and our iniquities like the wind have taken us away. When it says that our unrighteousness is like a filthy rag, here's what it's saying. It's saying that you come to God trying to act pious, but your sin is evident to him. I mean, it's so obvious that no matter how good you try to act, he still sees your uncleanness. So your act of righteousness per se, and this is really an act, to God it's a filthy rag. So do away. It's like you're trying to present a sacrifice when all he requires is your obedience. And that's what's happening in the church. We have a church where we have a lot of sacrifice, but very little obedience. And so the sacrifice of righteousness is done away with because we're not obedient. All right. Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 18 and 21. Let's see what this says. It says this, and this gives you an idea about how God regards sin in his community. It says, if a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and who, when they have chastened him, will not heed them, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of the city, to the gate of the city, and they shall say to the elders of the city, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of his city shall stone him to death with stones. So you shall put away the evil from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. That's right. If you have someone in the congregation who is rebellious, stubborn, will not heed instruction or correction, God considers that evil, and he does not want evil to be even known amongst his people. So even then, it's written in the law that parents can, your son's not right, son gotta go. God is that serious about sin in the midst of his people. It cannot be there whatsoever. So I'm sure Aaron was grieving over the loss of his sons, but God's judgments are righteous and just. Parents, if your children weren't doing right, you had to take them before the elders and do them away, because God does not want evil to be named among you. You can give all the sacrifices you want, but if you have not repented unto God and have been obedient to his word, your righteousness and your sacrifice is not accepted as a filthy rag to God. Let's look at another example. Joshua.